It is often said that police represent a thin blue line between good and evil, anarchy and order, civilization and savagery. As one officer writes on a police web forum, quote, "I generally don't think in terms of us versus them, but the reality is this. There is a thin blue line that separates good from evil, order from chaos, and safety from fear. Those are the brothers and sisters on the job." Or consider a line from the 2012 Hollywood police film End of Watch. Quote, "The thin blue line protecting the prey from the predators, the good from the bad. We are the police," unquote. The performative power of the thin blue line, as these quotations suggests, depends on both a promise of order and its near constant collapse or breakdown, with the, quote, "boys in blue" playing the role of a barricade holding back savage hordes. Make no mistake, the thin blue line is a battle line, which is to say that the thin blue line is a mythology of war. The phrase itself is widely thought to be inspired by a poem about war and soldiers, specifically Rudyard Kipling's Tommy, which describes British soldiers in the Crimean War in 1854 as a thin red line of heroes when the drums begin to roll. This police war is waged against anyone or anything that police determine exists on the wrong side of the battle lines dividing good versus evil. The thin blue line brings into sharp focus not only the logic of war, but also the theatrical power of police, or the ways that policing always entails a dramaturgical politics of storytelling, symbolic exhibition, and melodramatic fantasies of evil enemies and cruel underworlds. Policing can usefully be thought of as staging of melodramatic battles between conflicting forces, a form of police theatrics that tries to make the authority of the state appear to be a legitimate form of authority. The modern state is always engaged in a sort of political theater via mechanisms of fear. And to this we add that the thin blue line is one of the liberal state's most insidious mechanisms of fear. The word thin is interesting here for the way it implies an always unstable and uncertain border between good and evil. The story of the thin blue line is a story of society under attack, which is really just another way of saying that the police are also always under attack, whether it be from superior predator criminals, lower class debauchery, irrational mobs, heartless gangs, crazed drug addicts, merciless terrorists, sadistic murderers, child molesters, prostitutes, con artists, graffiti punks, liberals or leftists, or disobedient youth. The police story of the thin blue line is a war story of the line between civilization and savagery always getting thinner, whether by criminality, a lack of decency in society, or a failure to properly support the police. This mythology also helps to absolve cops who decide to cross the line, as we often see in television dramas, when the cop crosses over the criminal line in the apparent pursuit of justice. For cops, the thin blue line is understood as permeable and fluid. Hence, police are constantly complaining that they are underfunded, underpaid, understaffed, underarmed, and underappreciated, while simultaneously claiming criminals are only becoming more vicious, more brazen, better armed, with more advanced weapons. There is a cottage industry of thin blue line products, including t-shirts, hats, stickers, coffee mugs, and a plethora of other commodities depicting a bright blue line. It has also become a common meme on social media sites like Facebook, as officers and their supporters make a blue line flag the primary image for their profile, largely in response to what they perceive as a war against cops associated with the growing Black Lives Matter protests. One recent campaign encouraged police officers and others to change their front porch light bulbs to blue lights in order to proclaim that blue lives matter. One t-shirt depicts an American flag in black and white tones, except for one of the stripes being a bright police blue, as if to claim that the very existence of the nation is simply impossible or unimaginable without police. And if we think that's different here in Canada, think again. The thin blue line has been used against the Canadian flag as well. The thin blue line orients so much thinking about police power regardless of politics. The thin blue line claims that order and civilization can't exist without police, because police power is the very line, the border or boundary, dividing wickedness from the good life, morality from depravity, and the sacred from the profane. If there are no police, we are told, there will be no civilization. And life itself will devolve back to a Hobbesian state of nature, where life is nasty, brutish, and short. If we don't give our undying support to the cops, which is to say, if we refuse the police definition of reality, that is, think for ourselves, mass violence and chaos will inevitably be the only result. It was partly for this reason that the black revolutionary George Jackson wrote in Soledad Brothers that the thin blue line was patronizing shit. It is patronizing shit for the way it limits the political imagination by claiming that sociality can only exist with a world full of cops. The thin blue line is patronizing shit for the way it claims police keep the peace while ignoring the role of police in class warfare. It is patronizing shit for the ways it claims to be about protection from violence when it is really about maintaining the violence of property. To recognize the thin blue line as patronizing shit is to refuse the police definition of reality and to instead begin writing our own scripts of abolition.